It was supposed to be just another press conference, routine, predictable, and carefully controlled. The kind of event where actors answer familiar questions, share a few behind-the-scenes stories, and keep everything safely within expected boundaries. But something shifted the moment Heughan and Caitríona Balfe began to respond in a way no one quite anticipated. And within seconds, what should have been ordinary started to feel very different. The setting itself gave no indication of what was about to happen. It was a standard promotional event for Outlander, filled with journalists, cameras, and fans eager to hear more about the upcoming developments. The atmosphere was relaxed, almost casual, with both Sam and Caitríona appearing comfortable, even playful at times. There was laughter, light teasing, and the kind of easy chemistry people have come to expect from them over the years. Then came the question that changed everything, simple on the surface, but loaded with potential underneath. It touched on their experience working together, something they had both discussed many times before. Normally, the answer would follow a familiar pattern: professional respect, mutual admiration, and a few carefully chosen words about trust and collaboration. But this time, something in the delivery felt different. Sam answered first, his tone still relaxed, but with a slight pause that didn't go unnoticed. It was subtle, just long enough to suggest he was choosing his words more carefully than usual. When he spoke, there was a hint of honesty that felt less filtered, as if he had stepped just slightly outside the usual script. And for a brief moment, it sounded like he was about to say more than he intended. Caitríona followed, and that's when the shift became even more noticeable. Her response started smoothly, confident and composed, but then there was a small hesitation, a moment where her words didn't flow as seamlessly as before. It wasn't dramatic, nothing that would stand out to a casual viewer, but for those paying attention, it felt like something had almost slipped through. A phrase, a tone, a subtle change that suggested there was more behind the answer than what was being said. The room reacted in a way that was just as telling. There was a brief pause, a kind of collective awareness that something unexpected had just occurred. Not enough to disrupt the event, but enough to create a shift in energy. The interviewer moved on quickly, redirecting the conversation, but the moment lingered, hanging in the air longer than anyone seemed willing to acknowledge. What made it so compelling wasn't what was clearly stated, it was what almost was. The sense that both Sam and Caitríona were navigating a line, balancing between openness and control. And for a split second, that balance seemed to tilt just enough to reveal something more genuine, something less rehearsed. It wasn't a confession, not even close, but it carried a weight that felt different from their usual answers. Within hours, clips from the press conference began circulating online. Fans replayed the moment, slowing it down, analyzing every word and expression, searching for clues in the smallest details. What exactly had changed in their tone? Why did that pause feel so significant? And perhaps most importantly, what were they about to say before they pulled back? The theories came quickly, each one building on the idea that this wasn't just a random variation in speech. Some believed it hinted at a deeper dynamic behind the scenes, something that had always been there but never openly discussed. Others saw it as a reflection of the pressure that comes with maintaining a public narrative over so many years. And then there were those who insisted it was simply being overanalyzed, a normal moment turned into something bigger than it really was. But what made this moment different from countless other interviews wasn't just the speculation, it was the consistency of the reaction. So many people noticed the same shift, the same hesitation, the same feeling that something had almost been revealed. And when that kind of pattern emerges, it becomes harder to dismiss it as coincidence. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving anything definitively. It was about the feeling that something real had surfaced, even if only for a second. And once that feeling takes hold, it changes the way everything else is seen. And just like that, what started as an ordinary press conference became something far more intriguing. So what exactly was revealed in that fleeting moment, and why did it leave such a lasting impression on everyone who saw it? Because the truth is, nothing was explicitly confirmed, no clear statement was made, and yet the impact felt undeniable. It wasn't about a direct revelation, but about the space between what was said and what was held back. And in that space, fans began to see something they hadn't fully recognized before. The first wave of reactions focused on the details. People dissected every word, every pause, every glance exchanged between Heughan and Caitríona Balfe. The way Sam hesitated before answering, the way Caitríona adjusted her phrasing mid-sentence, it all started to form a pattern in the eyes of those watching closely. And once that pattern emerged, it became difficult to ignore. Some fans interpreted the moment as a glimpse into the reality behind the scenes. Not a scandal or a hidden story waiting to be exposed, but something more nuanced, a connection that exists beyond simple professional labels. Years of working together, sharing intense scenes, and navigating the pressures of a long-running series can create a bond that isn't easily defined. And in that brief moment, it felt like that complexity almost surfaced. Others approached it from a more analytical perspective. They saw it as an example of how carefully constructed public narratives can occasionally slip, even for a second. Actors are trained to maintain consistency in interviews, to present their relationships and experiences in ways that align with the image of the show. But no matter how experienced they are, there are moments when authenticity pushes through, small, unplanned fragments that reveal more than intended. At the same time, there was a strong voice of skepticism. Some argued that the entire situation was being exaggerated, that what fans perceived as a slip was simply a natural pause or a minor adjustment in speech. In an environment where every detail is scrutinized, even the most ordinary moments can be transformed into something meaningful if enough people focus on them. And from that point of view, the real story wasn't about what was said, it was about how it was interpreted. But what makes this moment stand out is that it doesn't settle into a single explanation. It exists in a kind of ambiguity that keeps the conversation alive. There's no definitive answer, no confirmation that resolves the speculation, and no denial strong enough to dismiss it entirely. Instead, there's a tension between different interpretations, each one shaped by how people choose to see the connection between Sam and Caitríona. That tension is what drives the ongoing fascination. Because when something is left unresolved, it invites people to fill in the gaps themselves. Some see it as evidence of something deeper, something that has always been present but never fully acknowledged. Others see it as a reminder that perception can be influenced by expectation, that what people want to see can shape how they interpret even the smallest details. What's undeniable, however, is the impact this moment has had on how fans view the show and its stars. It has added a layer of complexity to their understanding, encouraging them to look beyond the surface and consider the reality behind the performance. And in doing so, it has made the story feel more intricate, more human, and ultimately more compelling. There's also something inherently relatable about this kind of situation. The idea that something important can be revealed not through a clear statement, but through a hesitation, a pause, or a nearly spoken word, is something many people recognize. It reflects the way real emotions often work, rarely expressed directly, but hinted at in subtle, almost unintentional ways. In the end, what was revealed at that press conference may not be something that can be defined in concrete terms. It wasn't a secret exposed or a truth confirmed, but a moment that allowed fans to see things from a slightly different perspective. And sometimes, that shift in perspective is more powerful than any direct answer. Because the most intriguing part of any story isn't always what is clearly told, it's what almost gets said, and the meaning people find in it afterward. And maybe that's why the moment continues to circulate long after the press conference ended. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it felt real in a way that scripted answers rarely do. Those brief seconds created a ripple effect, turning a simple exchange into something fans couldn't stop thinking about.